Hey there. Today I'm taking a look at a fantastic wine from the Mclaren Vale. This is Noon's 2016 Eclipse. Essentially up until 2011 this was a Grenache Shiraz blend, blending Grenache from the Mclaren Vale with Shiraz coming from Langhorne Creek. At that stage, I think some vineyards that Drew Noon had planted in Mclaren Vale came online, and today it's a blend of principally again Grenache. I think it's 80. This particular vintage is 87% Grenache. It's got 8% of Graciano in there. Graciano, typically a Rioja grape variety that I think is there to provide a little bit more structure and acidity and age-worthiness. And then there's 5% of Shiraz in the blend. This is a wine, they're quite unapologetic about the fact that it's got high alcohol, and it's 15.5% alcohol. And what they're saying is that these are unirrigated bush vines on their own roots, and they simply grow until the fruit is completely ripe. And you know, Grenache will build up quite a lot of sugar in that process. As I say, unirrigated old vines. Looking at this comes from 3 plots. The plot closest to the winery and around the house is from 1938. There's another plot called BJ's, which again is Grenache, and that is from was planted in 1943. And then the balance, the Graciano and the Shiraz, were planted in 1998 and 2001. So some really old Grenache vines there, and producing this incredibly concentrated fruit. Drew Noon is a very modest and really sort of very mellow character, and his belief is to try and get as much of the beautiful natural character of this wonderfully ripe fruit out and preserve it into the wine. So when they make this wine, the fruit's entirely hand-picked. It ferments in small open fermenters, and the entire extraction process is done by hand, sort of pushing down the caps of skins back into the fermenting juice to give what extraction is there. Aging goes on in large seasoned old oak, and I mean Drew's got a fantastic collection of you know, really wonderful old barrels there. 300-litre barrels, demi-muid and foudre being used, and the wine will stay in these barrels. The French and American oak, there's a mixture, but being seasoned, of course, there's less influence in terms of flavour, and that will stay in oak for 18 months, giving plenty of time for the air to soften the tannins. Not that Grenache has particularly harsh tannins, but it just allows the whole wine to marry beautifully. And of course, 2016, this has a nice little bit of age on it there as well. So let's have a look at the wine and see what we make of it. Actually, one thing I don't think I mentioned was that being in South Australia, all these vines are actually on their own roots, so they're you know, they really are as nature intended them to be, because there's no phylloxera in South Australia. So I should have mentioned that. So looking at the wine, we have a colour that's starting to get, you know, fairly brickish red at the rim, but there's quite a sort of a dark, almost black ruby core. There's certainly no lack of intensity in the colour. As a swirl, I've already said the wine is 15.5%. It's unsurprising that there are quite reasonable tears starting to form. In fact, I'm almost surprised that they're sort of not more prominent than they are. And let's have a look at these aromas. The aromas aren't quite as rich as I thought they'd be, but they're actually quite heady. There's a sort of a rich, dark, black cherry, prune note. They're almost chocolatey notes. They're slightly savoury, slightly meaty notes. There's an underlying spice. It's not pronounced, but there's a very slight pepperiness there. That's probably related to a little bit of oak influence, although you know, remember, no new oak, so it's not a forward cedary note. So let's have a taste of that. That's mouth-filling and warming. There's an awful lot of structure. There's a real velvety, relatively drying, slightly dusty texture. It's sort of very much prune, stewed prune, dark plum, that sort of velvety plum skin sort of note. There's a lovely lifting acidity. There are savoury notes that are pointing at the oak there. There's a slight meaty touch as well. The warmth of the alcohol is rounding out the back palate, but having said that, it's not feeling hot, because those tannins are so sort of velvety smooth and mouth coating. You know, this is a big chunky wine. It's almost chewy, and considering that this has had time in bottle for the wine to soften and settle, it's come together beautifully. There's a sort of a chocolatey smoothness. I was talking about a dusty texture earlier. That's almost like sort of cocoa powder. That sort of very fine texture there. The tannins, although they've got a presence and they're drying my mouth, they don't have a bitter grip. You know, they're very smooth. With fatty meat, that would provide a beautiful counteraction between the two. Yes, this is quite a spectacular wine, to be honest. It's it probably has another 5 or 10 years in the bottle that would quite happily continue developing, but that's absolutely beautiful now. Would be a lovely companion to heavier, fuller flavoured foods. I could think with things like sort of game birds. Kangaroo would be a really good option there, or emu or ostrich, that sort of dark, richer meat, venison. Those sorts of things would be a lovely comparison with. I mean, if you ever do get the chance to try Drew Noon's wines, they always deliver in terms of just finesse, elegance. They're straightforward style, packed with this wonderful high quality fruit, and that's what he does so well. He grows this brilliant fruit and just gets it so beautifully into the glass. It's a real pleasure to taste the wines. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Do please feel free to follow us, to like and share, but also make sure you join us again. Bye now.